Okay. Hope everyone's all right. I've got the air conditioning going on, so hopefully you're not catching too much of it. It's another hot one today in the city. So what I thought we might do today is I saw this posted on Reddit, and it was someone asking about could they run, hey Ian, could they run I'm calling it Travelogue. I think they were talking about Marco Polo maybe as an influence. So you're traveling around, visiting different places, adventuring, as it will. Only 96, only 96 in Atlanta. Yeah, only 96. Um, you're off doing kind of Marco Polo-y sort of adventuring, and if they could do it, doing kind of BX old school essentials. And a bunch of people, it always kind of bugs me a little bit. I get it, but it bugs me. So a bunch of people responding simply saying, just pick another system. Why are you using BX? BX is dungeoneering. And okay, basic is dungeoneering, but there are overland travel procedures in expert. And part of what I think is one of the great things about either the white box or basic expert or old school essentials being, a new version is that it's such a slim and trim chassis that you can really do some tweaks, change some stuff without doing a whole bunch of work, without adding necessarily a whole bunch of complexity, and you can create these different kinds of games. And I don't know if you have, and this is kind of the thing that comes up with fifth edition, right? A lot, or at least it used to. It probably still does. That people want to take fifth edition and turn it into every game under the sun, and the reason is often because people don't feel like they or their gaming group or whatever want to learn a whole new set of rules. So they'd rather take 5e and turn 5e into every other kind of game than learn a new game. And I'm usually on the side of, hey, learn a new game. But 5e is really complicated with a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on. And I think as a looking at all in total, it's maybe more, it's brittle as a chess. Yeah. And what I mean by brittle is there are lots of ways to really kind of break it accidentally, lots of different interlocking systems. You cut a cord over here and you don't know necessarily where all that cord was connected to. And suddenly there are wires hanging out and things aren't working right. You may not realize right away. One of the benefits of something like BX, being that it is a much more simple game, is it's pretty hard to do that. And if you were to do it, it's pretty easy to fix. But the other part of it is this kind of travelogue adventure is not, I don't think, outside the wheelhouse. We're not saying take BX and turn it into, I don't even know what it would be because there are games that do all that stuff. Oh, take BX and put it in outer space. Okay, we've got, Mothership, or we've got whatever, Stars Without Number. Oh, take BX and put it into another thing. We have that, right? The fact is that the chassis is so simple. One of the reasons why BX became kind of the default chassis for so many OSR systems was the fact that because it's so simple, it can very easily be adapted. And Marco Polo, and I looked up the years, I think he was operating in the 13th century. So this is not something that's kind of even outside medieval times, maybe even earlier medieval times than maybe people even think. And we've got rules for travel. We got rules for going over, the hex crawling parts. And you could certainly, if we're just talking about traveling on roads and whatnot, you could use point crawl type procedures. All this stuff is there. So I thought it might be a good exercise and maybe handy to just kind of think about things a little bit. I don't know exactly how far we'll get or what we'll do. I have some ideas just to start, and obviously I'm open to suggestions from whoever happens to be here with me at the first in the chat. So the first thing I thought we would do, or I thought, is kind of where are you getting experience from? Because I think that this is where we're going to do a lot of the differentiation, because we're doing a travelogue type thing. And by the way, we could also do the same thing for, say, an Arthurian type story. If we're running a lot of Arthurian stories, we're probably not going to be going into mega dungeons. That's kind of, not that you couldn't do it in sort of an Arthurian setting, but that's not really what you're there for. There might be the odd escape the castle, or you're imprisoned in the tower, or you have to rescue somebody from the dungeon. But it's going to be relatively small affairs. We're not going into castle and into the basements, the 77 basements of Castle Greyhawk or anything like that. That, not that you can't, but that's kind of not what we're doing here. By the same token, that's probably the limit of what we would expect maybe in a travelogue adventure. We're not delving into levels upon levels upon levels of some mega dungeon. We're doing a lot of overland traveling. Obviously, going to go into buildings and do some exploration and caves. Not that there's not going to be any exploration or any kind of dungeon delving in the sense, but it's not as big of a focus as it would be in your kind of default BX game, where you're going to be assumed maybe to going multiple levels of dungeons, whatnot. And by the way, like my home game, when I was running my home game, my sandbox really turned into kind of an overland travel, not necessarily the travel, but just an overland game where the focus of the game wasn't doing dungeons, because my players just didn't like that as much as they did dealing with a lot of the stuff that was happening on the surface. And not, totally fine with that. Did we do no dungeon delving? No, we did some, but it wasn't just a focus. And so, the world, the sort of the game adapted accordingly. But just like in my home game, I was sort of thinking about, well, if we're not going to be doing a lot of dungeon delving, then that kind of treasure XP as treasure restored or treasure returned to circulation doesn't count for as much. Or I don't want it to be the main focus, because then that's where you kind of get that disconnect, which my players felt like, because for a while we were sort of playing the way we were playing, but the XP system hadn't really evolved to match it. And the question came up of, well, if we're not doing a lot of dungeon delving and that's where all the treasure is, how do we level up? And my answer was, well, I'm not going to force you to go into dungeons if that's not what you want to do. We just need to come up with different ways, different sources of XP. Okay, that out of the way. I think in the Travelogue adventure, I'm actually still fine with gold for XP as a basis. However, we're not going to be the main source, and this means that you could still potentially go into a dangerous place and retrieve some heirloom, some priceless treasure, or just some mountain of gold and still convert it to XP. I'm fine with keeping like that. But what we want to do is we can think about, well, what other things? Like, what are the things that you're generally going to be doing in this kind of traveloguing sort of adventure? And I don't even know if travelogue is quite the right word, but I'm going to use it. Someone let me know if travelogue is maybe not the right word. I'm sure there's some other words for it. In any case, all right, so gold for XP is good. But what I think I want to do, we're going to be doing traveling. So I want to kind of, and I'm not going to get into the super nitty gritty on this, because I could spend the whole hour trying to tweak back and forth. But essentially, we want to do something like we want to reward travel, right? We want to reward. Well, I guess look at the things we're going to be doing. We want to reward travel and trade, maybe some kind of diplomacy. I think those are maybe the big things, right? Travel, trade, diplomacy. Is there something else? If we think of kind of what were the things that people like Marco Polo were doing? They were traveling around, they were trying to trade, or maybe open up. So things like open up trading routes, making introductions between different courts, all that stuff would kind of, that'd be a trade, and diplomacy would kind of be covered there. And of course, getting from place to place is travel. And of course, part of travel could be exploring, opening up, there are established trade routes, which people have been using since time immemorial, right? Like the Silk Road. It's been in use forever and ever and ever. But maybe there's a new way. Maybe you can sail around the Horn of Africa. And if you can establish that trade route, then that would be something. So we want to reward these things. And I think the easiest way to do that, or maybe not the easiest way, but the one that maybe I think is, if we start off with the bottom line, that let me just put it this way. We should probably, and this is where I'm going to kind of hand wave a little bit, right? Is that we want to kind of make a convert these, what I call it? These, let's see, these activities. Yeah, convert activity values to GP. So basically what we'd want to do is look at all of these and kind of give them gold piece values. And there are probably different ways to do that. We could come up with, and like I said, I don't want to get super in the weeds into it, but this is where you could really customize it for yourself. How much do you, for example, basically if whatever's most important becomes worth the most gold. So if you really want to emphasize the travel bit of it, that moving around the world, visiting different regions, kingdoms, whatever. Hey, Brian Smith, if you want to reward those, then you can take your travel and you can use miles, you can use hexes, you can use whatever measure you want to. And you can essentially put a gold piece value on hexes traveled. Hey, when you get from where you are to somewhere else, how far did you go? However far you got, times some number, and you get, that's the gold piece value of that travel, and there that becomes your XP. Hey, 245 Trioxin says 88 in central Pennsylvania. Well, you're a bit cooler than me, as they'll say. According to, what does my thing have? Actually, I don't have the weather up here right now. What does my weather say? I got a cool even 90 here in sunny Brooklyn, New York. So we got an 96 in Atlanta, 90 in New York, 88 in central Pennsylvania. So we want to convert the activities to value. Whatever you value most, whichever activities you value most, grant higher values in GP. 75 and sunny in Michigan. Boo! Boo! Hiss! It's too nice. Yes, this is the weather report. This is the weather report. So whatever you value most, you can give the most experience points. Travel is fairly easy. Trade is also easy. I would use gold pieces, or maybe do it in thousands of gold pieces. So you would divide by 1,000, because you don't want people just trading little bits. We're talking about caravanning or something really valuable, or things really valuable. So you probably want to make large numbers. So it's not that, I took 50 gold pieces in one town, went to the next town and traded it, or sold it for that amount, and look at that, right? No, that's not enough. That's nothing. But if I go far away and I trade it, or the amounts, and you could do that too, right? You could do amount and distance, which would be a nice one too. Okay, you went this far, and you could just do travel. I guess it depends how you want to do it. I would probably just do travel separately and then do trade. Obviously, the further something moves, it's going to tend to sell, trade for more, because it's rarer wherever you're going to. So, you have wine from wherever and you take it halfway across the world. That wine is now really valuable. So you're able to sell it for 10 times the value, but you have to sell a bunch of it. So it's not that, I sold 10 for 100, so give me that. It's like, no, I sold 100, or 1,000 for 10,000, and that gives me so much. Or you could just do the straight up gold, I suppose. That could be another thing to do. But in any case, you probably want to, you don't want people to game it going from hopping village to its neighbor. Probably want to put maybe some medium distance on there. But in any case, if you want to make trade a bigger source of XP, then you can, of course, juice it by making it with a higher conversion, or you could keep it kind of level. Whatever you trade is what you get, or even some diminished value, essentially. Brian asked if this is an MLM RPG. This is not an MLM RPG, though I suppose it could be. If you can keep getting people, you can bring people underneath you to go do it for you. I mean, I guess that's what hirelings are. And then stuff like diplomacy, we could probably come up with some kind of hit dice or values for different states or kingdoms, or just, I don't even know what they call it, communities. And you could rate them, and then you could, if you go and you're able to get a good, maybe get some kind of good reaction or renown or whatever you want with those things, you could then rack up some XP. So, I'm being very general, but I think, hopefully the idea is there. But okay, we can kind of make XP. We could take the XP system from BX, and we're really not even converting them, because we're keeping gold for XP, but we're saying, hey, all these other things, it's not just loot now that has a XP gold value, but also these other things. And you could even make it different things besides these, though these are pretty generic. But you could be, if you wanted to do piracy and you want to make it privateering, capturing, if you wanted to do Sid Meier's Pirates the Game, and you could have something about the bigger the ships that you're able to capture and plunder, then beyond the treasure, just getting those ships is something that's valuable, and so you reward it. Okay. Now, so I think we've got that out of the way. Maybe I don't know if the least interesting part. something that I saw, and I wish I don't have it in front of me, but Rob Connolly, aka Bat in the Attic, put out a game, or his. I know he has a new set of rules, but he had an earlier set of rules, and I have it somewhere. But I think I've mentioned it before. I played in his game a couple times at Claricon, and he has his campaign seems to be of not necessarily a travelogue, but it's definitely kind of an overland style campaign where most of the stuff is happening above the surface. Not that you don't ever go into dungeons or caves or whatever, but that's not you're in both games he ran that I played in. This was much more about, hey, there are some bandits hiding in a cave, go get them, but the cave is not 8 levels deep, blah blah blah. It's some caves. They're in there, you get them out. It's almost more about the maneuvering, the finding of the places, the figuring out what's happening, the politics of things, all the stuff that's kind of happening right on the surface of the world, as opposed to in the underworld, right? Where most of the adventuring, it seems like anyway, from those, does not occur in the mythical underworld. It occurs just in the overworld. He had a character class called the Merchant Adventurer. And I remember I almost played it the first game, and I think instead I took a cleric because I think I hadn't played a cleric in a while. And then the second game I kind of picked up with the same character I had, so I played the cleric again. But it was a fun idea, and I think he had said that it was one of his players had requested it, and I don't remember it offhand, but I thought we could maybe build something similar, maybe not called a merchant adventure. I don't know what we could call it. A trade adventurer, caravaner, something of that sort. Basically, though, we can create some classes or tweak existing classes if we don't. You don't necessarily have to create new classes, though. I think it's fun. And I'm not one of those. A lot of people. I have to say, it does frustrate me sometimes. And people always say, "Oh, you don't need any classes, just the core 3 or core 2." Really, I mean, do you actually need more than wizards and fighters? In some ways, you don't. Cleric is really just a wizard fighter combo with some extras, and then everything else. But I mean, variety is the spice of life. I think people like having different classes. It's nice to have some specificity. It's nice to have a couple of tricks to call your own. I don't mind it. I don't think we always have to say, like, no, you must just be a fighter or a wizard, or cleric or thief. Right? I'm okay with it. So I'm not gonna. If it's your belief, if you believe that you need nothing other than those very simple templates, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's also fine to go the other way. I'm not. That's great. I'm going to create some new classes because I actually kind of enjoy creating classes and having other classes and doing things like that. So I'm sure I can't save myself from getting the comments of, oh, you don't need them, but I understand that I may not, quote unquote, need them, but I enjoy them, and I think other people enjoy them. And so it's fine, right? You can play it your way with everybody being fighters, and others of us can have caravanners or merchant adventurers or tradesmen or whatever. It's fine. We can all get along, and you can choose to ignore these or not as you see fit. Brian Smith says, the same people would say, do you need any crayons other than yellow, blue, and red? Right. I want my Van Dyke brown, darn it. Right. So we can make, I don't know what I'll call it. We'll call it trade adventure. I kind of like the idea of putting adventure in there. I was gonna say, I have the fighter page up here. So I have the old school essentials. I'm trying to do better. I have my books, of course I have my BX books. But for viewing on screen, I thought I'd go with the OSC because they have this online SRD, which is well formatted for the screen. So I'm trying that this time. Let's say I pulled up the fighter class, but probably the thief might be better. A door-to-door stabsman. Wilderness girls. Yes, there you go. Yeah, so this makes sense, right? This guy, Marco Polo here, though, look at Marco's, he's got a little compound bow action. He has a dagger. I don't know what the provenance of this picture is, but it was on the Wikipedia page for Marco Polo, so I presume it is a rendering of Marco Polo, though I don't know if it's a period accurate one or where it's from, but it works for us. So I like the idea. So, this guy is not a heavily armored guy. He's not. And the thing is that's great about this kind of game is depending on what your campaign is, there will clearly be lots of danger because I mean, there was tons of danger just historically at this time traveling around. But now, of course, you had monsters and everything else in the mix. And actual magic and demons and other outsiders and outer planar creatures, Cthulhian entities. Right? It's plenty dangerous, but it does make combat. Maybe it. I don't want to say minimizes combat, but certainly potentially changes the role of combat in your game, because a lot of your game may no longer revolve around combat or avoiding combat. I mean, combat may, depending on what you're doing, if you're playing sessions where you're in the court of the Great Khan, probably not getting you in a lot of combats. I mean, if you are, you're in way over your head, and you should probably run away, kind of thing. It may be you're doing a lot of the more sort of social. Maybe you're doing some sneaking around if you're trying to see things you're not supposed to see, whatever. But there's lots of kind of different things you can do, just different angles you can take if you want to play a game that maybe is, and again, not that old school games have to be combat focused, but one where combat is maybe not even a third of the game anymore. Maybe combat's like a sixth of the game, depending on where you are, kind of thing, depending on what you're doing. Yes, the adventuring slippers. That Marco Polo, this guy's good. So just because I don't love prerequisites, I'm not going to worry about them. Well, yeah, I don't know. That's fine. All right. So the prime requisite, I'll keep them. I don't love prime requisites, but I get that they can help. Because the thing I don't like about, I'm always, you have good stats. And if you're doing something like roll under stat or attribute, I guess I should say, in something like BX or Old School Essentials, that's plenty of benefit for having high scores. So then once you have that part in there, I'm not making any statements if you're using this in this one way or another. I'm not really addressing that. But once you have that, which I think is a fairly good reward for having high scores, then the less I want to have other things kind of pile on, because I don't like that rich kind of getting richer just off the bat. Oh, you have high strength, so you're going to do more damage. You're going to do this, and you're going to get better strength checks. And by the way, you're also going to get like a boost to being a fighter. It's like, man, you're getting a whole lot. And if I didn't get one of those, not only am I missing out on one thing, I feel like I'm missing out on 4 things. Rant for another day. Any case, for the trade adventure, I'm going to say charisma is their stat. I could see int being. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. Maybe even pick your own if you want to be. I could even do that. Charisma but I'll just do charisma for now, because I could see if you want to be a charismatic person. This is where I kind of like that DC 20 thing of kind of picking your own prime, right? Oh, you want to be a charismatic trader who's able to, honey-tongued person is able to come in and spin a good yarn and has dashing looks and is able to charm everybody. Then great, that's charisma. If you want to be coldly logical and you're able to just make the best deals because you just break down the numbers and you're just able to play that really well, then maybe you'd say intelligence. Or if you want to say you have just a feel for people, you just kind of, then you could even say wisdom. I would be totally open to any of those, right? But just for our purposes, because otherwise we'll get stuck, we'll just say, we're going to say charisma. I don't like having different hit dice, so I'm just going to have a D6 as hit dice. I like just giving everybody D6. A D4. I don't care about maximum level. I don't really care about armor, but that's fine. Yeah, leather. No shields is fine. Weapons. Daggers. One-handers. Bows and crossbows. I don't even know whether I really care about the crossbows, but I'll put it in there. Languages. Yeah, so common. I'm going to say +3. I feel like, and maybe this is something where it would be, I don't know, we could probably factor this a few different ways, but I'm just going to say +3 for right now. Because you're a trader, you're going to have talking multiple things. Or you could say, if we wanted to, I suppose, I don't know if there's some kind of trader's tongue. I'll just leave it +3. I don't care that much. That's not what I want. So we have these thief skills. So I don't think I want to keep. I'm going to do. This is where I don't think I can paste this in, can I? All right, I'm going to do something different. Yeah, see, I want to do everything X and 6, probably. So we're not giving, so let's see, is there any of these that they could cap? No, climbing, no. Here, no. Open, I could say open locks, but no. What do we think would be tradesman skills? What would be trader skills? I'm just going to kind of break it down. 1st to 3rd, 4 to 7, 8 plus. What would be trader's skills? And now part of this also is going to be, what do you want to play out versus what do you want to skip over? So for me, I probably don't need to play out bargaining. 6. How about 8? 7.5. 8. I know, that kind of thing. Just where you're sort of pricing out. So maybe we'll have some kind of bargaining kind of skill. Maybe it would be better as a 2d6. Maybe maybe a 2d6. Yeah, that'll be different. So we'll do. Yeah, so that's a good one. I'll definitely add that one in. So yes, we have right. So we have a value assessment. So yeah, so this actually I'll just do as turn undead. We'll use the cleric's turn undead table as cleric turn undead. Well, value assessment, bargaining. Yeah, identification. I would want to write these up. Like I wouldn't want it to necessarily be. We probably we can write up more. I don't want to get too much in the weeds over what we're doing. Like bargaining. There'd be some modifier based on maybe your level versus who you're talking to. Identification. Your level versus is it a mundane item? A weak magic item, a strong magic item, cursed, whatever, right? So those things we'd have some kind of scale, and we could use that turn undead table for clerics, which I can turn to right now. How many of these do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. I don't even know if we need to have 7, but maybe it's a good place. So if we go to the clerics, I'll show you what I mean. We go to the cleric. We basically have, the level of the cleric versus the level of the obstacle. Excuse me. So, for instance, we could say that in terms of identification, maybe mundane items are 1, and maybe some things could make them be harder to identify. And then at 4th is weaker magic items, and then say 7th is strong magic items, something like that. So you could come up with kind of a scale so that you get this as you go up levels. Easy things get easier until they're automatic, and then the harder things get easier, and it's nice. And you can use levels or hit dice or any kind of basically any kind of measure that you want in here, and then use the level here, and it's a pretty clean system. Know the trade roads. What would that be? Or get some info about what caravans or goods got ambushed or something. That I don't know that it's good. Remember, one of the things we're doing with these skills is where we're putting skills is where where we're not interested in role playing. Say, like I said about bargaining, And I'm sorry about my throat. Let me drink some blood orange spin drip for the working man. So that didn't help. So if we feel as a game, we don't need to. I don't want to have to describe everything and have them study it for a value assessment. I'd rather just do that as kind of a roll and move on with the game. Same thing for bargaining. I want to go bargain. Great. We have an established price and we can decide which way it goes. Okay. Done. Identification, kind of the same thing. Getting info, I probably want to role play that out. Or I want to come up with a system, because that is where you're in sort of a transactional mode, not like, or maybe a bit more high. I would say maybe a more high stakes transaction than, say, bargaining to buy or sell something. Oh, you have some information. Oh, all right. Sorry, I need some information that you have. What do I need to give you to get that information? All right. How is this back and forth going? That I'm probably more likely to want to role play out. So I don't want to do necessarily information guide. Now, if it were something like research, like in a library, that's something I'm fine to roll, because I'm not going to role play out someone going in just reading books in the library for hours and hours. So, but I probably don't want to just turn any kind of info gathering into that. I want them to think about where they're going and do the talking, and that's where I want to probably have a moment to RP it out, and then do that. Now, as far as maybe we could put navigation. So Brian asked if these are like passive skills. No, they're not necessarily passive. I mean, no, they're, if you're bargaining, that's active. You're going to bargain. If you're going to identify something, it's active. But what we're looking at, my general kind of idea with skills is that skills are for something you either don't want to role play out. Man, hold on a second. Skills. Man, my voice. Skills. You either don't want to role play out, or you can't role play out all of or you don't want to role play out the chance. We have a climbing skill, because if we role play it out, it's either going to be like there are no handholds, there's no way to climb it, or I just find the next crack, put my fingers in, and I put my finger. Like no one's gonna narrate. You're gonna get to the point where, if it's just a RP thing, everyone's going to climb every wall successfully, because they'll just say, well, I somehow find the thing, and I find the thing, and I keep going. So you need to you want to keep in that sense of, well, your character has this chance, but there's a non-zero failure chance, and we don't want it to just be completely random. So we're going to base it on something, and we probably want to base it on the person who's doing it, so we're going to roll. Alternatively, is we don't want to have that whole conversation of, oh, I go to the left and I find, is there a ledge to my left above my left arm? Yes, there is. Okay, I put my hands up there and I try to pull myself up. Okay, you kind of pulled yourself up, but you can't quite get yourself all the way. You need some more leverage. Okay, I look for a crack to my right where I can wedge in my right hand. Can I do that? Right? Yes. We don't want to role play that out. We just don't. I mean, I don't want to. Maybe if you're playing with a bunch of rock climbers and spelunkers, they might want to, in which case they would probably structure their skills differently. We just get to a point where, like, you know what? Let's not spend everyone. We're doing this together, and the thief and the GM are playing this moment. Everyone else's eyes are glazing over. So we're gonna roll some dice. You're a good climber, but this is difficult, so there's a chance of failure. Let's roll some dice to settle it, because if we just RP it out, you're just always going to climb up, and I don't want to just say you fail just because, right? So that's why we're rolling dice. So it's not about it being passive or active. It's about where do we want our kind of direct interaction with the fiction to stop, and where we kind of want to just say, like, okay, we're just gonna, you go to the library to research. Great. Do we want to role play out this 10 minutes? You looked at this book and you did this, and then you took a pee break, and then you got a little drink, and then you came back. Like, no, we don't want to do that. So we're going to roll a die to just say, and over so many hours, like, downtime, whatever period of time, we're going to say either you succeeded or you failed, or you came up somewhere in between. Okay, so Brian asks, okay, so that's a skill that covers an action that isn't fun to play out. How about the book? What is the bookkeeping skill? So people will get, there's hirelings to do accounting, though someone still has to do some accounting. But what is the bookkeeping skill, quote unquote, Brian, that you're referring to? Um, and while I'm waiting for that comment to come in, so we've got some trader skills, value assessment, bargaining, identification. I could definitely see navigation being there. They got to know how to get around. Maybe cartography would be a good one. I don't know. We'll just put navigation for right now. Okay. No idea about bookkeeping. All right. So this is a good, I think, starting thing from the trade adventure. We can just XP as thieves, I suppose. Maybe a +1. I don't know. We could see about giving. I was wondering about giving some, because one of the things I want to do, one of the things that was part of the intriguing thing with this was the idea of really looking to see what we have in the game. Because I think sometimes we don't take advantage of all the tools we already have in the game. We want to create more. We want to create more meta currencies, more things, more this and that. But we have stuff. So what we could do is something with the trade adventure. We could give them some bonuses to things, like maybe they get a +1 to reaction rolls amongst certain things, or maybe they could just re-roll their reaction, right? If they're meeting somebody for the very first time, they get to re-roll their reaction once. That is just, or give them advantage. It's just a way of saying that, hey, they're really good at this, so they're gonna do that. So if you're traveling with the trade adventure and they're kind of front, they're gonna, they're going to have that kind of advantage. But we don't have to add a bunch of mechanics. Just, okay, we already have reaction rolls, so we just roll for reaction rolls. Much like I would be fine giving a fighter type some kind of morale bonus to people in combat as long as he's up and in front, because rally to our captain, rally to our champion. I think that has an effect. And so you can give a fighter a little bit of a kind of a extra effect, but we're not adding anything new to the game, kind of thing, right? We're just using the things that's already there. Or like giving a ranger type, hey, we have these mechanics for getting lost, and we have these mechanics for random encounters in the wilderness. Well, what if a ranger has a little bit of a bump to those things, to a little bit, they don't get lost quite as easily, and they're able to avoid things more easily, and maybe even they're the surprise. They're less easy to surprise. So you can do a lot. Even something like BX or the white box has some stuff in there that we can leverage more if we want to. I don't know for the trade adventure if maybe we want to. I was thinking about, well, we could maybe give them some added perks, but they're already, if we're picking the charismatic people anyway, then they're already hopefully getting some kind of bonus to charisma. But if I were gonna, maybe if I got to a point where I was gonna do kind of final versions of these, then maybe I'd say, oh yeah, we can go and do that. But I'm not gonna worry about it right now. Oh, Brian Smith says, keeping track of debts, market prices, frescoes, and dungeons. Well, there is a accountant. I think ultimately the PCs are going to have to kind of take charge of their finances and kind of market and keep track of them. But what the accountant you can do with an accountant hireling is you can essentially, if there was the idea that they might be adventuring when, say, taxes are due or something happens, or keeping everybody paid while you're away. So you're starting your domain, or on some level, or you're just starting your company or whatever, and you're off adventuring. So there are people you may employ outside of your adventuring party, such as your accountant, and maybe you've got some guards, and maybe you've got a butler or a housekeeper or somebody, whatever. You have some people, a troubadour who sits in the tavern and sings the party's praises while you're gone. All those people need to get paid. The local lord or whatever might also need to get their rents paid. All that stuff. If you have extra horses, things they need to get fed, things need to get maintained, all that stuff. Once you get an accountant hireling, you don't have to worry about, as long as they're supplied with the money to be able to pay, they can do all those charges for you. You still need to, like as a player, if I'm the GM, as a player, you still need to track those. But now you won't be late. If you're out adventuring and you forget that the 1st of May is when rents are due, and you guys are off on an adventure, you don't have to run home to pay the rents. Your accountant takes care of it for you. So that's kind of where I would go with that. It might not be exactly the same, but That's it. So let's make another one. So we got the Trader Adventures one. So we can have the Explorer. Prime requisite. I'm gonna say Wisdom. Leather, no shields. Almost could be the same. Or maybe I'll say leather or chain. Or it says he would pay his GM literal money not to have to track that stuff. Well, I mean, just set up a Google sheet or Excel. I mean, I know it's not sexy to have your Google sheet or Excel sheet, but once you set one of those things up, you can kind of automate. I mean, that's what one of my players did. They had everything in these Excel sheets. I guess they probably use Excel during their day job, so it was easy to set up. But just set it up, you know. But I hear you. I hear you. Well, hopefully you work. Hopefully everybody comes together as a table, and so you find that kind of balance that you want. I mean, if everyone really hates it, then I suppose you could use usage dice or something else. But to me, it's just I think there's a certain amount of like with everything. There's I don't know, call it not downtime, setup time. Like with a hex crawl, like with anything, there's some amount of time you just have to kind of put in to get everything set up. But then once you have it set up, it becomes more and more trivial to kind of just go on to the next step. So once you have your Excel table up or Google Sheets or whatever, then adding another row or for the next month or whatever, it becomes really just a 2-second thing. You just have to go through that initial setup first. He likes a clear separation between day job and play. Well, I hear that too. You can always do it on pen and paper, or you can add. Hey, look, you maybe some people like that stuff, and I really want to play Pendragon, and part of Pendragon feels very much like you're playing Excel the game, but I still really want to play it. Maybe there's someone at your table who likes that more, and just put them in charge of all the finances. So have them be the party accountant, and then it's not everybody tracking it. It's one player who may enjoy setting that setting that stuff up who is tracking it. Okay, so we got an Explorer. Leather or chain, all right, that's fine. No shields, I'm fine with that. Bows, crossbows. I guess I'll put spears. Makes sense that they would have. Common. Okay, so now let's see. XP as what would this be? I suppose we could keep doing XP as thieves. And let's see, they get +1 to navigation, i.e., getting lost. Get rid of these for the minute. Let's see. +1 to let's see, what are the things? Oh, to avoiding encounters. Plus 10 feet per level. Encounter distance. Okay, so here's kind of what maybe this is maybe a better chance. We have an explorer type. A little bit more heavily armored, I think. Though I could go back. Someone could convince me to go back to leather because they're out in the wild, so maybe chain is a bit much. Anyhow, daggers, one-handed swords, weapons, bows, crossbows, spears. I think those make sense. Okay, they speak common. +1 navigation. +1 avoiding encounters. plus 10 feet per level, or I guess, sorry, it should be 10 yards. We're outside. Counterance, and then we'll give them +1 interaction with animals. Okay. Framework says wisdom. They're less likely to get lost. So when they're making those navigation checks, so remember in kind of old school essentials, BX by default, the world is rolling to see whether you get lost. You go in the desert, I make a roll, and the desert basically indicates the value. I'm gonna put to. It kind of probably should be something like this. I have different systems I would use this. I've done that, and I created that anything D6, which is probably what I would use for this system ultimately to make it a little bit more robust. But something like this for a low level, mid level, high level, something like this. +1 to the roll, +2 to the roll, +3 to the roll, whatever it is, less likely you're going to get lost. And probably the same thing here, right? So this, I do like things that scale a bit with your level. Something similar. You're more likely to avoid encounters. And then even if you either don't want to avoid the encounter or you're unable to avoid the encounter, you get more distance. Distance is always good in these cases. Well, for the most part, if you're trying to surprise somebody, maybe it's not that good. But if you have the perfect ambush set up, that would, and I would totally, if there was something like that, we're like, no, we want to be close because we want to ambush them, then I would say, okay, you don't have to use it, but you can essentially be further away. So if I rolled up 70 yards away from the encounter, if you're a third level explorer, you could make it 100 yards from encounter, which just gives you more time to do stuff. And then animals going to tend to react better to you. I think you're just this is kind of like a range. I mean, it's really like a rangery, right? It's kind of a different sort of ranger thing. No, but we're not getting rid of the Aragorny sort of things. We're getting rid of the animal talkers, but we're giving them some very, it's down to earth, stripped down, but you're getting kind of similar. Like, hey, I'm good in the outdoors. I am significantly better in the outdoors than normies. But like I said, I could tweak these up, but I think we're kind of getting the idea for this one. I don't know if I need to do a fighter one. I figured you could just use fighter for fighter. The only things I might think of for a fighter might be maybe there'd be more of so here's the thing, right? So we're doing a lot of overland travel, maybe caravanning, maybe so things of that sort. A lot more people, right? The group size is going to be bigger. You maybe if you're just doing exploration, you're just doing some things like that, you might be in your regular sort of party squad with a few hirelings if you wish. But then there's also going to be parts where you might be having companies of people. I mean, this is a type of game where hiring a bunch of mercenaries, having like a real band behind you could be a thing. So maybe with a fighter, I want them to get more, like we talked about before, this kind of idea of their lance, their sort of company that they get to lead around. I might want to lean on that a little bit, but other than that, I'd probably just leave the fighter alone. Brian Smith says they like the distinction that this class would be great on established roads, maybe not as great as a ranger off the trail. Which one? So the trade adventure would be good on roads where they can kind of navigate, but not the explorer. Better at navigating kind of out in the wild. So yeah, there is some distinction. So these are all things that can be refined. Depending on how kind of period specific you're going to be, you could take the cleric and maybe move them away from a paladin into more of a priest or evangelist type thing where they're not heavy armored, like that, but they're more like wizards, but they're more like divine wizards here to, proselytize for their particular deities kind of thing. Oh, there's my cat. Come on, Bruce, you can make it. My cat's getting older. Sometimes he seems to struggle with getting on the bed. Other times he got it. He's a smart one, Bruce, in that he knows if he complains, if he meows, he calls out, people will just, put him on the bed. But I'm on stream, so I couldn't do it. He managed to get up there, right? He got there. Bruce made it. So, whether you want to do a cleric as less of a Templar type and more of a traveling kind of preacher, itinerant priest sort of thing, traveling to distant lands and trying to spread the word of Palor or whoever their deities. We could probably do that. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, and the thing is, like, I look at like doing these kind of things. Okay, making this trade adventure. Which, and look, here's the thing. We don't really even really need these. It's kind of fun to do, but you don't need them. The game has basically all the things. Okay, yeah, so we're not engaging with so much as dungeons, so the dungeon procedures are not going to be used as much. That's fine. We have overland procedures. We're just going to be really the biggest part here is just that change your sources of experience. If you want to run this kind of game where it's more of a travel thing and it's all about just going to new lands, meeting new people, making connections, opening trade routes, buying and selling, yeah, sure, rescuing uh, nobles in distress and maybe finding magic swords and plundering tombs and other ruins on your way. That's all, great. You do all of that. It's really about to make the vanilla game more like that game. The biggest change is just saying, well, where are you getting your experience from? Because what you set your experience to is what people are going to gravitate towards doing, because people tend to want to advance. So in this case, if we sort of shift experience from dungeon delving to overland travel stuff, then people are probably going to overland travel. I mean, assuming that's what the players want to do, and presumably you're doing this whole thing because you and your party, you and your table want to play this kind of game, then that's the kind of thing you go. So you just really just reward the people for what they're going to do. I like to kind of come up with classes and things. People like classes. That's the other thing. Like people like classes. I always run into this all the time. I said this before. I don't want to be a broken record, but that I get it that you can just RP everything out, and you only need a fighter, and everything else can be RP. I get it. I totally get it, and I don't even disagree with it. You absolutely can. It is a thing that you can do. But it's also fun to play a class that's got a couple of quirks and things, and it is fun to play something like, ooh, I get this little thing that I can do, and that's fun, and people like it. So there it is. So we came up with the Explorer, which is kind of rangery, but very salt of the earth rangery. We didn't do much, but just gave them some. These are passive bonuses, right? These are passive abilities. Just whenever we're making rolls to navigate, or they're making rolls to navigate, if we're doing a kind of player-facing way, which is kind of how I like to do it now, as opposed to rolling to get lost. I like them to roll to find their way. They're better at it than others. They're also better at it than at avoiding, I would say, outdoor encounters. It's not dungeon stuff or inside stuff. Outdoor encounters. They're also get increased encounter distance. They get a better reaction with animals, and maybe we could scale that up too. But yeah, who knows? And then XP is kind of as thieves again, because these guys, I like that. Maybe I'll take away the chain. I don't know. They are again sort of light. I don't know how I feel about that. I could go back and forth. Go back and forth, back and forth. You could also tweak these however to suit. Are there any other? What are the other archetypes? Are there any archetypes from this thing that we're missing? Like, I could change fighter to soldier, or soldier adventure, or mercenary adventure could be one, but it would basically be the fighter. Maybe I'd add a couple of things just because I like to tweak the fighter to kind of give them a little extra juice. Wizards, I don't think need much unless that one you want to flavor it more as a sorcerer or flavor it more as something else. That's fine, but a wizard, basically the wizard's the wizard. I think thieves could still be thieves. If you want to have classic thieves in there, you absolutely could. Don't really need to change much. I think when we're looking at our three kind of XP, our three I guess activities that we're trying to kind of mechanize a bit. Travel and trade are covered by these guys. Pretty good. Diplomacy, I'd want to RP out. I could make a diplomat. There could be somebody who's a diplomat. I feel like the trade adventurer is, maybe that's it. Maybe that's not it. Someone who's there to glad hand and make friends. But maybe that's really just what the trade adventurer's occupation is. That's kind of what they do. Animal handler or driver. I don't think we necessarily need one. We don't need. I'm really looking at kind of what are the sort of big archetypes. Uh-oh, the temperature went up to 91 degrees. What if there are any kind of large archetypes? Animal handler, driver, it's a skill set. I don't know, like, is anybody, and the thing is too, right, as a player, if you come into the game as a player and you can be an explorer, you can be a trader adventurer, you can be a fighter, you can be a cleric, you can be a thief, you can be an animal handler. Well, like, it's not, eh. There could be like a pilot, kind of like a real kind of navigator type, but I feel like the trade adventurer can kind of do that, right? Like John Blackthorn may be maybe it would be a trade adventurer in a sense. Hey, Maya Mystic. Finishing up the stream here, Maya, but appreciate you hanging out, coming in. So I'm not sure if there's any archetypes that we could add, but it's really, I keep a lot of these videos, I feel like I could summarize by saying it is not that hard to just monkey around and put together a couple classes or tweak existing classes. I know Maya just showed up, but I've got about an hour to do this, and my hour's almost up. But I got you. If the group is playing a caravan, you'd be a driver. Well, yeah, you could be, but I feel like anybody could do that. That would be something where I let everybody do. I feel like everybody in this time period, or at least in the gamified person, would can do animal handling. Like, I wouldn't force somebody to need. This. I'm not trying to make a skill-based game. So I'm not trying to have it be, check your animal handling skills. So unless it was something super difficult, in which case, I don't know, I figured out a role for it, then I would just, let you do it. Maya, if it's not related to the topic, then find me on social media and ask me. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in any custom artwork at the moment, but I appreciate it. Okay. I don't think I'm missing. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing some archetypes, right? And we could have a diplomat if we wanted to make something that was literally just doing diplomacy type stuff. We could do a diplomat. I don't know if we need it because I wouldn't want to. I mean, you could have some passive stuff, right? Diplomats could get some passive stuff to just reactions with people, so they just tend to get better reactions. Good diplomats there, though. Like I said, I think the kind of trader adventurers maybe would be in that same spot. I don't know. I'm trying to think of whatever else there could be because we've got fighters. We got whatever. I hope. Am I interested in non-customer artwork, Brian? I mean, I'm always interested in artwork, but I'm not interested in logo stuff. I will put out. Tell you that this is kind of the thing. If I'm looking for art, I will probably reach out to somebody and say, when I can afford some art and I have something for art, I will probably put out a call saying I need some art. So at the moment, I can't really afford any art. Though I will show you, I posted this. I guess I'll show you since we're kind of finishing up. Well, why not? It's my show. Where did I put it? I guess I can show. Where was it? I could do it. No, hold on a minute. That's not it. Well, I mean, I can show that. So I did. So there's the pretty much the finished map. The finished map for the starter adventure that we've been working on off and on. So part 6. I thought about doing part 6 today, but I kind of got fired up about Marco Polo BX or OSE style. So I kind of, but I got this. So if you've been following along, since you've last seen it, what have I done? I numbered it, so everything's got numbers now. And I added the key for the outdoors. I added a key for the kind of indoors and thing. Put the 5-foot square kind of thing in there. Got that. And then the other thing I did, which I was messing around with today. No. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me find it. Hold on a minute. I did post it to the I think I posted the community tab. Pretty sure I did on YouTube. But I will put it here. Is this it? There we go. There's kind of the cover, and I gave it a name. And one thing I noticed, I'm gonna flip. I really like the subtle claw that I put in here, but I actually want to flip it out to be this way. It's just a little bit more. It's got a little bit more. I think I like the kind of symmetry of it. But there's the cover, which I'm pretty happy with because it's not AI. Obviously, it's not hand drawn, but I was able to find some elements that I could kind of put together. So it's, I mean, this is kind of things that's really simple in a sense. I found an image of a hand. I was, able to isolate the hand. This is something that I really, there are, I don't want to say underappreciated. Yeah, the claw shadow is pretty subtle. That's intentional. I just want it to kind of be there if you spot it, but if you don't, and it just adds a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like it just adds a little bit more. There's a lot of texture because of the wall. But yeah, I found this claw shadow. I decided to enter, but I think I got to look at it both ways. But I think I want the claw shadow actually to come from the other way. I think I want to have it go like that, so that you sort of have this through line through here through the shadow. So what I did was I found a blank wall image, and then so what I was gonna say is machine learning, that kind of thing. There's some things about it that are kind of the stuff that gets a lot of play, and rightfully so, and a lot of attention and a lot of scrutiny, and rightfully so, is the content stuff, right? Where your Chat GPT or Mid Journey or Stable Diffusion, that kind of thing. But where there's some of the really useful things are, and things that don't necessarily, I wouldn't say are I think one of the arguments for, I think, against a lot of AI stuff, which I agree with, is that it is kind of a, they're not if they're not they're not really boosting your creativity. They're kind of replacing your creativity, because and you're doing it through kind of plagiarism, or just play, just off plagiarism enough that you're not plagiarizing one person, you're plagiarizing thousands of people, but each one you're only plagiarizing a little bit, so it doesn't, it passes the eye test, or at least it passes whatever. In any case, but there are and some of these tools are not particularly new. They keep getting better. Are these tools like using machine learning to do things like be able to isolate bits of a photograph? So it's something like I've been using. I need to figure out another way to do it, because I want to cut off my. I don't really. I've been weaning myself off Adobe. I still pay for the subscription, and so I get access to their online. What do they call it? Online tool, where you can do a lot of this stuff. That's where I usually do all my thumbnails for YouTube. I just do them on there because it doesn't have all the tools of Photoshop, and sometimes it's frustrating the tools it doesn't have. But a lot of stuff it does have, and so it can do really easy things. You can go into the stock library, and I found this wall. I found this hand coming out, and I was able to quickly use a one button remove background to just isolate the hand. There is another graphic in here of a hole that I put in, though the hand kind of ends up covering it up. But I wanted to kind of have, I might tweak that just to give it a little bit more of a sense of a hole being punched in here, as opposed to just a hand stuck to a wall. I found another thing to kind of add in the shadow. This kind of shadow here is not, and it's not great. It's not perfect, but I just wanted to get kind of that idea that there's a shadow here, because it's light coming down. And then I found this claw silhouette, and so I threw the claw silhouette on top of there, and played around with its opacity and its blending, and kind of sit it over there. And then I put the text and stuff in Affinity. So I did the background parts. I could have done the whole thing in Affinity and found the source graphics, but it's just easy to kind of mock up together in that Adobe tool. But it's not great. But it kind of gives the vibe that I'm looking for. So pretty pleased as punch about that. Just as something that I can finally show. I can put it. I can add it to the thumbnails and things, and I can just sort of have it there. I posted it in the community tab. There's one other thing I had. Hold on, let me find it. I'll share since I'm sharing. This is something else. Let's see. Let me find it up here. And it is, yeah, pulp novel vibe. That's exactly the kind of things I was looking at. I was looking at, so the wall came from Escape from Alcatraz. If the posters from Escape from Alcatraz, some of them show a wall that's kind of like this with a big crack in it, and then Clint Eastwood kind of poking out through the the crack as he's escaping. And that was kind of something I like. And yeah, I like the idea of the pulp covers. I wanted to put in some text about sort of what's going on, so I kind of did that. So yeah, it is absolutely what I was looking for. Yeah, I could definitely see it being a B movie or C movie VHS tape cover, which is totally fine with me. So this other thing, so I've been working on these. I'll scroll up. Oop. So these are basically these hex cards I've been making. And these will go into my long overdue Kickstarter, my zine. And then I'm also going to make these something you could get printed out on. I want to get them printed out as hexes on something like the Game Crafter. So you might see that. I have to figure out how I can get a test printing done. I have to make sure these are created correctly and then do it. But it's got we got terrain types, my kind of rating system, my sort of terrain attributes, and then some. If you want to roll some dice down here, yes, the font is indeed Cooper Black. Yeah, I've been enjoying Cooper Black of late. It's not too dissimilar from Souvenir and some of those other ones, but yeah, a little bit different. I like it. I've been enjoying it. So yeah, Cooper Black, which is also used on that cover. So here we have grassland, and then I've got a river, and I've got woodlands, and I've got a lake. I got a badlands, a wetland, a desert, and see these. So what you're rolling for on these, if you wanted to use these as tiles, if you want to use these as kind of pick out of a bag, you could. I don't have one particular usage for these. These are pretty much. I want to put some functionality and some use into them, and then I hand them off to you guys or whomever to use them however you want to. So one way you could use them if you wanted to is you could pick terrain out of a bag, something like that, and then you could put them on a map, or you could use them just to reference. And here, if you needed some woods, you could roll for what kind of woods you get, that kind of thing. So there's not a particular this is the one use for this. It's multi-use. Whatever use you can get out of it, you can. So that was lake. Badlands, right? Wetlands, desert, and then and the mountains, and then I have these other ones for some settlement types, basically. A homestead, a village, and so notice you get some different symbology here. So I'm trying to have some symbology. So these are the ones that represent things you're doing. This is for navigation. This is for travel speed. This is for basically how active the hex is, how dangerous the hex is, how hard is it to get supply in the hex. Those are what all those mean. So you get all those there. And this is just the overall, basically, how difficult is this terrain. If you needed one number, you want one number, that's the number. So that's what all those things mean. When you get to this one, I have some different symbols. This means you can get shelter, supply, and information. So on a homestead, you can get all those. Same thing with a village. Town, now you have trade. So or commerce, whatever you want to call it, right? So in a village, there's no, right, my conception of village anyway, there's no trade going on. There's no store, there's nothing. You can try to stay with a farmer. You could, maybe they'll let you sleep in the barn or whatever overnight, or in their house, because their house is oftentimes also their barn. You can maybe get someone to give you some food, and yeah, you can ask them stuff, but you're not trading for stuff. You go to the town, obviously you're buying this stuff, but you can, buy supply, buy trade, buy shelter, right? And you can get information, but you can trade for stuff. And then stronghold, not really trading for things. I suppose you could, but it's more about, again, shelter, supply, and information. And you get to roll some dice kind of about what kind of stronghold it is. And I think that's the last one. Yeah, that is the last one. So look for these coming soon-ish. Soon. Fairly soon. So I just figured, well, I'm here. Might as well share those. All right. Well, I hope this was useful. I just really, really all I wanted to do was really just kind of prove that you can do these things before you just dismiss and say, oh, you should play another game instead. The other thing is sometimes I saw some of the games that people were posting instead, and they weren't of the same like rules density as BX. It was like, oh, you can play this other game that's really crunchy to do this thing that actually I think BX can do quite fine, quite well, and doesn't need a whole bunch more complexity or rules or mechanics. Though you're welcome to add them in if you want to. But that you can do these things. Another one that I saw, and I thought about doing a stream on that, and let me know if you can let me know in the comments or elsewhere if something you'd like to see go into, was this idea of they wanted to run a game that was like the video game Dishonored, which was a long way. It seemed to be their way of saying they wanted something, and this is kind of silly. To me, it sounds silly, but I wasn't going to get into it. Basically, like, oh, they could kind of do a stealthy approach or do another approach, and I was thinking like that's kind of just the game. You don't need a whole other game. You don't need new mechanics to do a game where you sneak around the guards or ambush the guards or fight the guards head on. It's like that's just called playing Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know, but I think in terms of stealth games like Thief, things that really more delve into the stealth, that might be another area we could look at and say, what would we want to do if we wanted to make a really stealth focused kind of game, as opposed to stealth being one among many. We want to elevate stealth above as the main focus, as opposed to other ones. We could kind of work on that too if you wanted to. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. Probably nothing for a while, since I've got a backlog of stuff I need to do. But I will probably come revisit them because I think it's fun, and these are kind of games that I love to kind of play. And I don't feel like I necessarily even want to be totally dungeon centric all the time. If that's what folks are doing, it's fine. But it's also fine, I think, doing other things and looking at how you can tweak the system to just have it be a better fit for the things that you want to do is kind of the name of the game. That's kind of what in my mind, that's what your house rolling and things to do, is to make the game, right? It's like you get the game, you get a suit from somewhere and it fits okay, but you want to take it to the tailor to get it, that perfect fit. And that's how I feel like you get the game out of the box. You want to get one that's a good fit for you, but then you want to tailor it to your specific table, right? So that's what we're doing. All right, folks. I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to get out of here. Let me know what you think. Let me know what stuff you'd like to see. Got to touch grass even in D&D. Yeah, absolutely. Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you'd like to see from me, of course. And I'll talk to you later. Game on, everybody. And enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. And as I said, game on. Bye now.